And greetings, everyone. Welcome to the Apptrepreneur Show Special Election Day edition, kind of. Anyway, I am your host, Kevin the Apptrepreneur. Thank you so much for joining me. As always, it is an honor and a privilege to have you here. This is where we can discuss the gig economy, apps, and a little bit of entertainment here and there, when you want to be indulged. So, anyway, we don't do this weekly anymore, but once in a while we like to do it live. And I think on election day, we do want to do this particular story live. I see we have Naz, the gig accountant, in. Thank you for joining us, Naz. And we have several more people. Now, for those of you who are watching live and you're not sure how this works, the special live editions is basically a regular episode of the Apptrepreneur. We go over a story, I give my little commentary, but unlike most pre-recorded stuff, you can actually be a participant in the story and you can ask questions and we can discuss during and after the show. And so just to kind of let everyone know, although we accept questions of any kinds, please try to keep the questions related to the actual topic at hand, which today the actual topic at hand is Prop 22 and the election. If there's some time afterwards, we can go into randomness at that point. But anyway, so I just discovered this story, and, oh, hi Ryan, how you doing? And I realized this would be a good story to discuss live, because you know what's going on with the whole Prop 22 thing is, obviously this is the final push. Everyone on Uber's camp is saying vote yes on Prop 22. People who, I know this is very passive-aggressive, who care about human beings are saying no on Prop 22. I know it's more nuanced than that, but, that's kind of the stance I'm going, especially when you look at stories like I'm going with here. And, I've gotten a lot of comments today, people like outright saying, I'm voting no on Prop 22, or I'm voting yes on Prop 22. One person even said, drivers want Prop 22 to pass, which I was like, some drivers want Prop 22 to pass. It's not everyone. Let's not exaggerate. If it was everyone, well, then 100% it would be yes on Prop 22. It's probably not going to. I would be shocked if that's what it was. But you know what Prop 22 would probably help? It would probably help at the very least a family of Khalid Zaid, who died of COVID-19, and because he was an Uber driver, he was not helped by either the government or Uber himself. Now, this is a fairly lengthy article, but let's kind of take a look at it. And this is from the Los Angeles Times. Khalid Zaid worked long days, driving as much as 80 hours a week for Uber to provide for his family. Now, in a video that I posted earlier today, I pointed out how Uber was predatory. You know what? I don't know what he was making, but I can almost guarantee you that the 80 hours a week he was working, well, it was probably much less than minimum wage when you factor in that a real job would have paid him overtime and then double time and benefits and vacation and sick time. So, but yeah, this guy, because Uber was not paying him enough, had to work 80 hours a week to provide for his family. Now again, I'm not knocking that he's trying to provide for his family. I'm just knocking that we let a system like Uber and Lyft, to be honest, take advantage of someone like him. Anyway, when he died in a Riverside County hospital in July of complications from COVID-19, his wife and children were left without a breadwinner, which is also a mistake. I want to state this right now, although everyone's situation is different. Never, never, never let the gig economy be your main source of income. And if it is, someone else has got to get a more stable job somewhere. That's just the reality. Anyway, reeling from grief, they were left to grapple with the nation's worst economic downturn since the Great Depression. And these are some pictures of him and his family. Seems like a very nice guy. Then they applied to the state workers' compensation program for death benefits and got nothing. The 56-year-old Zaid had taken a hiatus from work when the pandemic stay-at-home orders took effect. And by the way, Uber and Lyft should have turned their apps off, but, they didn't. But expenses piled up. One morning in June, Zaid packed a cooler with a few Diet Cokes and his diabetes medication and went back to driving full time. He came home with stories of customers who jumped into the car barefaced and refused when he offered masks from his personal stash. Now, I know I have a lot of people here who do not believe in the masks. You know what? That's your prerogative. I think you can agree that it is rude to refuse to wear a mask when someone who's using their own private vehicle to carry your ass somewhere tells you to wear a mask. That's my opinion. His children begged him to return to spending his days at their house in suburban Corona, but the family savings had dwindled and federal stimulus money had run out. Because pretty much everyone got the stimulus checks, but not all of them qualified for unemployment. He felt he had no choice. About a week later, he came home early, exhausted, and sweating. Zaid said he felt cold, he felt hot, he couldn't breathe. He was buried on a sweltering day in July. Relatives lined up in cars by the cemetery to pay their respects. Through the state-administered workers' compensation program, created to provide wage replacement and medical benefits to workers who suffer job-related injuries or illnesses, the family might be eligible for at least $320,000 in death benefits, according to a lawyer the Zaids consulted. Given that his wife, Lamis, and the two of their children who are still teenagers had been dependent on Zaid's earnings, the lawyer said the family might even be eligible for additional hundreds of thousands of dollars over the next few years. I mean, that would be nice. I mean, it does not replace Zaid, but, financial help is financial help, especially in this day and age. Still numb from the loss, Zaids filed a workers' compensation claim, but the claim was shut down. A letter dated September 30th said benefits were denied because Khalid Zaid had been an independent contractor and never an Uber employee. As part of Proposition 22, one of the highest profile measures on Tuesday's ballot, Californians will decide what should happen to families like the Zaids. So this might be interesting. I know almost everyone here has probably voted, but for those of you who voted no, this story might make you feel a little bit more comfortable. And for those of you who voted yes, well, this is the kind of things outside your bubble you're probably not paying attention to. Under the current state law known as Assembly Bill 5, Uber and other companies are supposed to designate the gig workers who are core to their business models as employees, not as independent contractors, and provide them with benefits, including access to workers' compensation. Gig companies have resisted complying with the law. I love how they word that. They've resisted complying with the law, because that's exactly what they're doing. It is law that Uber and Lyft drivers and even Postmates and DoorDash are employees now, and they just don't want to comply with it. Which is why Zaid was still a contractor at the time of his death. Now, I will say, on a little side note with this one, if the law states that that the drivers are employees, and Uber and Lyft are just fighting that status, then I think he should have gotten these benefits at least until it had been worked out. Now, I don't know. Maybe if it had worked out in Uber's favor, maybe he would have had to pay those benefits back. I don't know. Maybe there's like an employment lawyer out there somewhere who could help us clear that up a little bit. But it's a shame that this is basically what Uber and Lyft are fighting against. They don't want to take care of people like Zaid. Uber, Lyft, DoorDash, and Instacart have jointly poured $200 million into the Yes on 22 campaign to secure an exemption from AB 5. A lot less of that money could have been spent taking care of Zaid, but whatever. If Proposition 22 passes, the measure would cement gig worker status as independent contractors. It would compel companies to give them some additional benefits that mimic those offered to employees under California labor law, but are weaker. Yes, because, for example, if Zaid took that sick time off, then guess what? He gets some sick time, but then he also stops earning sick time, and he could also lose his position. The catch-22, right? The measure lays out plans for a private insurance policy, which Uber has already, to cover on-the-job injuries that in some ways replicate the state workers' compensation system. However, experts say there are clear gaps and the program will not offer protection that's as comprehensive as workers' compensation. So, maybe Zaid, even if this had been active, let's say Prop 22 had passed in April, and maybe he still wouldn't qualify. Who knows? Much discussion around Proposition 22 has focused on whether employee status is compatible with the type of flexible schedules workers hope to keep, and on uncertainty over whether gig companies will cut jobs if they are forced to turn gig workers into employees. Well, as for whether or not they will cut jobs, of course they'll cut jobs. They don't need 300,000 employees. But would they still have flexible schedules? Yes, they probably could. Granted, you'd probably have to do what the Amazon Flex does. You'd have to choose a shift. But, there's UPS does this sort of thing all the time. Why can't Uber and Lyft? I don't know. What is less understood are the nuances that the benefits Proposition 2 would confer. Now, Glenn Shore, a former policy advisor for the California Department of Industrial Relations and lecturer in public health at Sacramento State University, UC Berkeley, said, they're trying to recreate the workers' comp system, which is a couple hundred pages of law in 4 or 5 paragraphs. You're not going to get the same level of coverage, same level of benefits, or the same independent of the claim. The text of Proposition 22 reveals some key differences between the proposed private policy and California workers' compensation program. The ballot measure would require gig companies to provide coverage for medical expenses of at least $1 million for on-the-job injuries, meaning they could choose to cover more, but would not have to, of course. By contrast, there is no limit on medical care expenses covered through the state program. And while workers are eligible for lifelong assistance for permanent disability through the state and are entitled to vocational training if they need to switch jobs due to injury, the Proposition 22 policy would offer only 2 years of disability payments. 2 years. So, yeah. So all you people who are disabled who want to use Uber and that's your excuse, I'm disabled and I need Uber, yeah, they're going to take care of you for at most 2 years. And that's, of course, assuming they don't kick you off. Additionally, experts say that under the Proposition 22 policy, it would be more difficult for workers to secure compensation for COVID-19 related illnesses, disability, or death. An executive order signed by Governor Gavin Newsom in May and codified into law by the legislature in September established a presumption in workers' compensation claims that essential workers infected with COVID-19 contracted the virus on the job. Employers can fight it on a case-by-case basis, but it still means a lower burden of proof. To get the money, the workers need only show that their jobs put them at greater risk of contracting the coronavirus than the general public, said Cheryl Wallach, a lawyer who advocates for health and safety laws with the nonprofit workforce. The relaxation of burden of proof would not apply to claims under the private insurance policy, according to experts and an attorney for the Yes on 22 campaign. More broadly, it's unclear how claims under the private policy would be decided. So really, for all this talk about we have a plan, we know how we're going to get you the benefits, we know how we're going to get you the time off, we know how we're going to get you the sick leave, it's really unclear how the claims under the private policy would be decided. I mean, Uber and Lyft say this is what they're going to do, but are they? We don't actually know because it's unclear. So really, when you say yes on 22, you don't even 100% know what you're saying yes to. Let's continue. Shore said that the state workers' compensation system is set up to be an independent body with objective judges, but Proposition 22 does not discuss how the private system would work if left up to the companies to decide exactly what kind of claims qualify for coverage. It could give them the power to make the systems ineffective and avoid paying benefits to workers, he said. Oh, I believe it. Here's the thing. Uber and Lyft do not have your best interests at heart. Nothing they have done has ever actually benefited the workers. I mean, remember when they were giving away free college tuition? But then, of course, if you actually took advantage of the college tuition, you're not driving enough, and therefore you don't get that college tuition anymore. Because, hey, they're giving it to you on the promise that you're going to drive for Uber and Lyft. But you can't go to school and drive the insane hours they want you to drive at the same time. So eventually you end up choosing one or the other. So Uber has always offered little half indulgences, if you will. Like, we'll take care of you in this area. We've got a healthcare provider. We've got a compensation. We've got a schooling plan. How many of you actually take advantage of that? How many of you can take advantage of it? They make it so that you really can't take advantage of it, and they will probably do the same thing here. Remember, Uber and Lyft are not your friends. Representative with the Yes on 22 campaign said the system would work like any other private insurance policy, auto or homeowners insurance, for example, that have set processes for submitting and disputing claims. Disputes could be resolved by private parties through litigation or arbitration. Yeah, arbitration we want. That's exactly what drivers want. We all know how that works with Uber. And if state officials found companies were not holding up their end, they too could pursue litigation, said Jeff Vetter, a spokesman with the campaign. Yeah, but that's the thing. How many times have we seen Uber and Lyft actually follow state officials' word? When AB5 passed, their response was, it doesn't apply to us. Even though, yes, it clearly does apply to you. That's why we've got a Prop 22. Jordan Gaytan, a lawyer with Zapana Alder Law who is representing the Zaid family, remains skeptical that Prop 22's insurance policy would be a suitable alternative to workers' compensation. I'm going to personally just say no, I don't think it would be. Even though the measure in theory provides for death benefits similar to those the Zaid family applied for. As Gaytan has said, I don't even know what court of law it would be applied in. It creates what we'd call a legal quagmire, this gray area that Uber and these rideshare companies can operate in. And here's the thing, Uber and Lyft operate wonderfully in gray areas for themselves. They have basically built their entire companies on gray areas. And so if you think that passing a proposition that will just give them one more gray area to play around with, I don't know. I don't think you're going to get anything substantial out of it. Uber declined to answer questions about whether the Zaid family or others in similar situations would be qualified for death benefits under Proposition 22. And the reason they won't answer those questions is because the answers are pretty obvious. Of course they wouldn't, or it would be much, much lower. And who wants to actually discuss the negative right now? Like, vote yes on Prop 22. Trust us. It's what Mothers Against Drunk Driving want. Uber spokesman Davis White said in an email that the company provides COVID-related financial assistance and has paid out more than $10 million to over 16,750 drivers and delivery workers since March. Yeah. I'd like to see the receipts. White said the policy also potentially covers driver fatalities, but that Uber has no record of Zaid or his family contacting the company for assistance. No, they probably wouldn't have that, have no record of that. They probably delete those emails first chance they get. Gaytan said neither he nor the family knew the fund existed. He added that the policy, which provides up to 14 days of financial assistance to a driver diagnosed with the virus or ordered to quarantine, which this is the quagmire, Zaid was not ordered to quarantine. He did so out of abundance of caution, which in hindsight sounds like that was a good thing. And yeah, I guess he did finally get diagnosed, but it's not like Uber makes this easy to get anyway. So, and in fact, here's like the real sad thing about the Zaid story. It sometimes takes more than 14 days for Uber to even respond to you because they want doctor's notes and documentation. Then most of the time they deny you on an arbitrary claim anyway. Well, if it takes that long, Zaid would have died before they even got back to him, and then they would have not fall through anyway. Gaytan said that this policy is not a suitable replacement for hundreds of thousands of dollars in assistance provided as part of death benefits, right, which are benefits that Uber's not even paying into right now. Gaytan is pushing for a trial through the Workers' Compensation Appeals Board to dispute Zaid's independent contractor status. And maybe he has a point. Maybe they could actually argue that one because AB5 was law. The courts ruled that these people need to be employees. Uber just didn't make them. So maybe you could argue in the court that he was an employee at the time. Courts deciding on worker classification cases are watching the ballot measure. If Californians vote down Proposition 22, the family will have a better chance at winning their case. And I'm going to say right now, and this is going to be very unpopular, I have more sympathy for this family than I have for any of the people who just want to be able to log on and off whenever they want. You know what? In my opinion, if Prop 22 fails and it helps this family, while it hurts 100 other drivers who now have to actually clock on and off at a certain time, would have been worth it. And I know that this would help more than just the Zaid family. In the meantime, Zaid's 28-year-old son, Tarek, is working a new job as a loan officer, under pressure to help provide financially for his siblings, a brother and 3 sisters, and mother. He said he used to make decent money as a car salesman, but his commissions tanked when the pandemic hit. So, yeah, and also, I mean, the thing about this little part is that this is noble of him. He should not have to do this as a 28-year-old. He should be able to be living his own life. But, you know, the family's in trouble, and so he's doing what he has to, and I think that's admirable. His father's death isn't the only one that has rocked the family in recent months. Tarek's uncle, Zaid's older brother, died of a heart attack in September shortly after helping to pay for the funeral. Tarek and all but one of his siblings still live in the 2-story home in Corona, where the family has lived for nearly 20 years. Everything in the house reminds Tarek of his father. Zaid was a handyman, constantly fixing things, clambering up on the ladder one day to tweak the chandelier, the next repairing tiles and stuccoing the walls. The kids usually knew Zaid was working on his daughter's car when they heard the deep, quavering tones of celebrated Lebanese singer Fairuz drifting through the house from the stereo in the garage. Zaid was born and raised in Jordan, where his family settled after fleeing their homes in Palestine during the wartime. He immigrated to California in his mid-20s. His longtime friend, Nabil Jabroun, said Zaid dreamed of going back to visit the region, but hadn't had a chance to do so in many years. I would say, one of these days, whenever you can, you will go see my home in Jerusalem, Jabroun said. He would always say, Inshallah, I want to do that. Sad story. So yeah, if Prop 22 fails, this family could be greatly helped. And they wouldn't be the only one. There would be many, many, many families like this who would be helped. And, you know, even some of the people who are voting yes on it, you know, they would be helped too. They would act, if you have like if you have a condition where your immune system is compromised, then guess what? You could actually get pandemic assistance from the government, because not only would you be an employee at that point, but Uber would be paying into it. You know, when the pandemic hit, Uber didn't shut down the apps. They didn't help the drivers. If you caught COVID, they would give you something sometimes, but most of the time it ended up not being much of anything, and Uber did everything they could to get around it. Look, I know some people really like having their flexibility. I know they think that they're making money doing this. I don't think you are. I think you think you're making money, but most of you aren't factoring in expenses or miles or things like that. And if Uber's paying less than the cost of what it costs to maintain your car, then basically you're sacrificing your car for your work, which you shouldn't have to do. I don't know if Prop 22 is going to actually succeed. In fact, I wonder, do we have the result? We don't have the results on what Prop 22, if it's actually going to pass or not. They just haven't recorded that yet. But look, if you haven't voted yet, I recommend vote no on Prop 22, but it's up to you. So there you go. So anyway, I would like to know what you think of this. So comment below, like, favorite, share, subscribe, and as always, flame responsibly. And I'm going to look at some of the comments now. Let's see here. So Ryan says, I'm doing good. Hopefully you and Kate are doing well. Yes, we're doing fine. Naz, the gig account, says, I see lots of YouTubers on both sides. Yeah, no, I see YouTubers on both sides, but that's with any political issue, really. Tommy Cash says, Suburban Corona, stop it. Well, yeah, I resisted commenting on that. There's nothing more expensive than cheap labor. The only thing his loved ones will get is a few free rides from Uber, probably. Jody says, this is why Uber needs to get shut down for good and not be allowed to do business ever again, because how many people is it going to take to take dying for drastic measures to be taken against Uber? Well, I think for most people, even when they read these stories and they see these stories on my videos, they don't care because it's like, well, it's not someone I know. Like, it's working for me, but Uber is working for such a small percentage of people that it's like, look, you can make the argument that Amazon is working for a few people who work there, mainly the executives. They're just a few people, but the system's working for them. But if you actually do anything else in that company, it sucks working there, and you are abused and you are underpaid. And people agree that should probably change. But with Uber, as long as I'm making my money, who cares if other people can't make it work? They're just lazy. They gotta change their tactics. Marcus says, darn, this game is getting real. Yep, getting real. And Naz had posted a couple messages, but he retracted them, so I don't know what he said. Well, anyway, that's the last comment. Thank you so much for joining us in this episode of the Apptrepreneur Show. Again, feel free to subscribe, comment below, like, share, subscribe, and I might see you later tonight. If we find out what the results are, we might actually you might see me one more time today. Otherwise, I'll probably see you tomorrow. Take care, everyone.